What is going on, YouTube? It is your boy, Faithful to God. And tonight we're going to have a very interesting dialogue. Before we get into any of that, I'm going to give some people some time to actually come on in. Let's start the countdown. All right. Hopefully you guys can hear me now. All right. So tonight's show is going to deal with the disingenuousness of Dante Fortson and Orthodox Moor. So recently there was a controversy that was prompted by these two gentlemen in which they attempted to, let's just say, be very deceptive in how they went about painting the narratives that they attempted to paint. Tonight, I'm going to address the falsehood of their narrative, the falsehood of their allegations. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and present somebody who was privy to the conversation that I had with one Orthodox Moor. I want to say it was in July. I got 93 here. What's going on, 93? You got to unmute your mic, 93.
Peace and love, family.
Yes, sir. So 93, before I get into everything, let's kind of give people, I just started the stream, so let's give people a little bit of insight into how we even got to this point. So back in July, matter of fact, I'm going to tell you the exact date. I didn't have enough time to screenshot it, but I want to say that the conversation took place.
I remember July 8th.
I do know that. And it was after I had appeared on Berean TV. I had a conversation with Berean. I called Dante Fortson out. I brought out information. This eventually prompted him to make a video. Then we made a video response. Then Tazarad tried to counter our response, and we made a counter to his faulty response. But needless to say, all of this initially began on Berean TV when I called Dante out to debate. And what ended up happening was Dante apparently put out some sort of weird stipulation or something like that. After that stream on Berean TV was done, I ended up having a conversation with Orthodox Moor on Facebook. Is that correct?
On Messenger chat.
Yes, on Facebook Messenger. That's right. And what ended up happening was, just give me a moment. What ended up happening was we had a 3-hour dialogue before you came into the conversation. You came in towards the end. It was a 4-hour conversation altogether. 3 hours initially, Orthodox Moor and myself, and then you were there for the last hour. Is that correct, sir?
Yeah.
When you were in the conversation, you brought up the whole idea of Dante Fortson trying to put forth a very weird stipulation, which really just looked like him looking for an excuse not to debate. You mocked the stipulation. Orthodox Moor was in the conversation. True or false that he didn't agree with the stipulation when we had a conversation with him, correct?
When we spoke, I brought up Dante's stipulations in the community tab, one of which you had to prove you were Puerto Rican and a bunch of other stuff. And he said out of his mouth something to the effect that that was ridiculous, and he didn't think that was necessary. He didn't agree with it.
Indeed. So to give everybody else some insight into what's going on, this was my attempt at extending an olive branch to Orthodox Moor. And the reason why is not because I agree with his doctrinal viewpoints, because I don't, but I feel that when he tries to approach a lot of the, well, let me say a lot, certain subjects, more specifically subjects that have to do with DNA, lineage, that sort of thing, he takes a different approach than some of the other guys on that side of the fence. And he also has attempted at the very least, it seemed outwardly attempted to try to be somewhat cordial, dispassionate in the way that he approaches the topic. So what ended up happening was I had spoken to Abu in private. Abu had told me that he finds Orthodox Moor interesting. He thinks that Orthodox Moor is very different. He seems to be a gentleman, and that I should give Orthodox Moor a chance to at least form some sort of cordial, so we could have some sort of cordial correspondence between one another. We don't have to obviously agree on doctrine because that's not going to happen. But at the very least, if we can have conversations on methodology, on, how, certain people come about their, coming to their conclusions, we can do that because he seems to be open to the idea, receptive to the idea of being, uh, open to not only correcting folks from his side, but also making sure that people who oppose Hebrew Israelites are also being consistent in their methodology. So needless to say, we had a cordial correspondence in private. We had a conversation in private where we, it seemed like we were having a good dialogue. I told him that I, in certain respects, could see where his points were, and I agreed in part that his position, which is different than Dante's and others, his position, so everyone knows, Orthodox Moor's position is that you determine Israelite lineage, you can determine it through the mother side, the father side, or if you're a convert. He believes converts are genuine, true Israelites. So any of those three for him would indicate that the person is an Israelite. Now, I told him his position was unique. It's different than the other Hebrew Israelites or people who hold to the position of believing that they're Israelites, and that it in essence it opens up the door for just about anybody. Anybody could essentially claim that they're an Israelite via that methodology when you really get down to the nitty gritty of how you come about determining that viewpoint. So we had a long conversation, 3 hours. The conversation went well. The final hour, 93 came into the conversation. And then what he said about Orthodox Moor, where Orthodox Moor thought that Dante's stipulation was ridiculous, and that he didn't find it. He thought that it wasn't. He didn't think it was good. And in essence, what Orthodox Moor ended up doing was saying he would try to mediate a debate between Dante and myself on Debate Talk for You somehow, some way, that he would try to figure out a way to try to get that to happen because he was of the belief that the debate could happen. And I was like, fine, that's cool. If you can make it happen, you can make it happen. Now, fast forward a few days later, keep in mind, we have just extended olive branches to each other. I had previously had a conversation with Orthodox Moor, and that conversation went very bad based on something that he assumed about me. I had no idea what he was talking about. Somehow that turned into a back and forth. It was just not good. And if you're going to come at me aggressively, I'm not the kind of person that's typically going to back down. So the conversation didn't end well. I ended up blocking him. So I had unblocked him to even have the conversation that we had in July, in early July. So what ended up happening was, and I'm trying to give you guys the exact date. All right, give me a second. You guys just give me a moment. Trying to find the chat log.
I remember.
Oh, you do remember?
Mm-hmm.
When
It was July 8th, but I believe whatever show you was on might have been the night of July 7th. Because remember, we was up early in the
yeah,
morning, like we was up early,
right?
to maybe about 4 or
So
5.
right. So what ended up happening was, after that conversation, I think he had shared a video on DNA, some new video he had done on DNA. He shared it in the chat, and everything seemed to be cool. And then some days after that, he decides to make a video talking about why are the UAs making nationality a salvation issue, and he mentions my name. When throughout our entire conversation, at no point in time did I tell him, do I believe nationality is a salvation issue? Somehow, some way, he was trying to come after me. And when he did that, I was like, wait a minute, what is this dude doing? This is crazy. Like, he ended up basically trying to attack me. Abu went in there basically to point out to Orthodox Moor that his reasoning, and this is the crazy thing. He made a video to basically say he agreed with Dante Fortson that the stipulations that he put forth are warranted. If I'm going to question people on their Israelite identity, then I should be questioned on being a Puerto Rican, which is absolutely outlandish because I don't make I'm Puerto Rican. I am the very person that's my ethnicity. It's not like I decided one day I picked up some book and tried to conjecture this idea that I was Puerto Rican. One, and two, I don't make my being Puerto Rican a theological thing. I'm not basing my being Puerto Rican on theology. Dante is basing it on theology. There's a huge difference there. Now, with that being said, he makes a video to basically say he agrees with Dante's stipulation after he told us in private that he didn't agree with his stipulation. And not only that, he's attempting to make it seem like I'm making it a salvation issue because apparently Dante Fortson has never said that being an Israelite is an issue of salvation. He doesn't say that only Israelites can be saved. But this leads me to believe that Orthodox Moor is not familiar with Dante Fortson's approach to the topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some screenshots to show that Dante Fortson, while he's not saying only Israelites can be saved, that's certainly not Dante Fortson's position. It is his position that if you disagree with his assessments, then somehow, he bears the right to cast aspersions on your salvation. So it says Minister Dante Fortson says salvation is not about race, but, and this was a correspondence that he had in Black History in the Bible. So this is with a woman named Samantha. He says, thanks for leaving a comment. I'll answer your questions one by one. What specifically do you believe is not true? Number two, I don't teach racial superiority. The Bible does teach it, though. Here are the verses you can read for yourself and see it clearly. See it. Clearly states that the Hebrews are above all people on earth. I didn't create or write it. I only point out scripture. I don't teach anything as biblical that isn't found in the Bible. Number three, your belief that Christ doesn't have a color is false according to the Bible. Daniel describes him as having arms and legs the color of burned bronze, and he misuses Daniel 10:6. And I will make a video to refute his poor appeal to these verses in the future. So don't think that because I'm not actually dealing with them right now that somehow I'm agreeing with him. I'm not. Or that I think that somehow he's right. He's not right. John describes him in Revelation as having feet the color of burned bronze. And then he quotes Revelation 1:5. I think he means 1:15. Here is a picture of burned bronze, which means he definitely chose a color, and that color is the same color as black people today. Jesus was black. Describing him in any other way than what the Bible describes him as is false, self-deception, and blasphemy. Christ definitely had a color in the Old Testament and in the New. Unfortunately, many believers refuse to describe his color exactly like it's found in Scripture. Burned bronze. Instead, they come up with their own doctrine of no color. Middle Eastern olive, brown, but not black. And every other day, like, does he think that like black people are actually black? All right, anyways. And every other dance around on the planet. It's simple. Describe his color as it reads in the Bible in case close. And then here he's quoting, he's misapplying these passages. All of this I'll deal with when the appropriate time comes. So Dante Fortson, yeah, here we go. Here goes another one. Let me actually show another one. So Orthodox Moor initially argued that Dante doesn't make it a salvation issue. Now look what it says right here. R. Takei says, so if one goes to their death, never having had the opportunity to learn the truth that Jesus is not how they imagine him, are they lost and hellbound? Talking about, I guess, appearance. So he says, many people outright refuse to believe the truth when it's presented, instead cling to false image. How would they be any different than the person that believes the lie based on deception? Both believe in a false white idol and a false biblical narrative created by Europeans. The truth sets us free, not a lie. The truth is Christ, but nowhere in the Bible does it mention you have to believe Jesus is a specific skin tone. And his misuse of Revelation 1:15 is going to be addressed in a future video so everybody can see that Dante has no idea what he's talking about. Now, look what it says right here on the side. That's why it's called a deception. Why would someone believing in a false image, which means they believe the lie of a white Israel, which is connected to all sorts of other lies, be in danger? If their entire concept of scripture is based on lie after lie, how could they truly be a Christian? So Dante bases your Christianity on the color of the Israelites, essentially. You have to believe his faulty interpretation of colorism in order to have right standing. So clearly Dante is making it a salvation issue. Now, if I could for a moment, let me stop sharing this. I'm going to show you guys, even though he says stuff like this, he contradicts himself. So, for example, this is from his blog, and he says the following. Now, he'll claim that I do not believe in salvation. Ooh, I don't know what this is. I do not believe in salvation. I do not believe salvation is based on race. I do not believe salvation is only for Israel. You know what's funny? He doesn't believe salvation is only for Israel, but we're going to see a little later that since he tried to make an argument against me with false information, we're going to find out that this actually backfires on him. I do not believe salvation is only for Israel. I believe that non-Israelites can be saved. I believe that salvation is through grace alone. All right. But then down here, he says stuff like, I identify as an Israelite by birth based solely on the evidence that I've personally uncovered during my research. If you'd like to take an honest look at some of the evidence, please see the following video series addressing the evidence. I believe that the Negro scattered across the world via slavery is the true Israelite of the Bible. I do not believe that Ashkenazi and other European Jews are the true Israelites of the Bible, according to Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, which is ironic because Revelation 2:9 and 3:9 is actually in reference to the really real Jews that rejected Jesus. And if you would like to see proof of this, I have a video on my channel called The Correct Understanding of Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. You guys can check that out whenever you get a chance. That's called The Correct Understanding of Revelation 2:9 and 3:9. So, with that being said, I find it interesting that this is Dante's position. And yet, as you saw earlier, you apparently have to believe in his interpretation of skin color, or else you don't have right standing. Now, Dante, going back to the whole thing with Orthodox Moor put out an initial video where he attempted to not only claim that I'm making a salvation issue when we clearly see Dante is the one making it a salvation issue. Also, I should point this out as well, if you just give me a moment. Dante Fortson actually claimed I don't believe in Jesus, which is a lie. Anyone that is a subscriber to this channel knows for a fact that I am a staunch defender of Christ, the Christ of Scripture. And Dante, on the other hand, goes out of his way to not only misrepresent me, but he flat out is bearing false witness. Just give me a second. I'm just trying to find the relevant screenshot here. So he had a back and forth with one Jonathan Hawkins. And I may have to look for it right here if you give me a second, y'all. So Dante had a back and forth with Jonathan Hawkins. And he said something to the effect of, yes, here it is. Found it. So yeah, actually stop presenting. I'm still presenting. Hopefully I'm not presenting. All right, here we go. This is what he said to Jonathan Hawkins recently about me, lying about me. So Jonathan says, on who, Dante, scared to debate faithful? All that mess and can't set up a debate. He a troll in real life, a YouTube pop star American Israelite. Dante responds, I didn't ask Faithful to debate. He asked me. And based on his history of being a lying scumbag that doesn't believe in Christ. Now, he says, I don't believe in Christ. I certainly do believe in Christ. And by the way, this was before we did our video when he says, I can't share my sources, which obviously I did share my sources. He says, furthermore, his claiming to be Puerto Rican is 100% relevant to the discussion. No, it's not. Me being Puerto Rican is irrelevant because I'm not making my ethnicity a prerequisite to having a conversation, and two, my being Puerto Rican is not theologically based. I'm not basing my being Puerto Rican on theology. Furthermore, my understanding of Puerto Rican is much different than Dante Fortson's understanding of being an Israelite or who he thinks are Israelites. I don't base a Puerto Rican based on the idea of morphology. Dante bases who is an Israelite on morphology, on phenotype, skin color, hair texture, that sort of thing. I'm not basing who is a Puerto Rican on that. Theoretically speaking, if a person were to be an Ashkenazi Jew and they were born on the island of Puerto Rico, they would be Puerto Rican. My understanding of Puerto Rican is different than Dante Fortson's. Now, Dante, on the other hand, doesn't seem to believe that converts are true Jews. So there's nothing there that coalesces with my view and his view. His view is remarkably different than mine. So for him to put forth that stipulation is irrelevant. First and foremost, I am Puerto Rican. That's a fact. It wasn't like I decided to become Puerto Rican. I didn't read some book and then conjecture the idea that I was a Puerto Rican, like Dante apparently misread some of his sources and conjectured the idea that he was an Israelite. That's not how I came about it. And I also don't try to make faulty appeals to DNA when that same argument can backfire onto Dante, by the way. I don't do that either. But Dante indeed tries to make faulty appeals to DNA. He doesn't even have a consistent methodology at that, which is ironic because even Orthodox Moor admitted that he didn't have seemed to have a coherent methodology. When we spoke, Orthodox Moor told me, yes, he's still trying to figure out what Dante Fortson's methodology is. Now, with that being said, I want to point out several things. Orthodox Moor misrepresented things that we spoke about in our conversation. While I in part agreed with Orthodox Moor on the idea that a person, to be fair, because I want to be fair to Moor despite the fact that he's been unfair to me, I agreed with Moor that if a person uses numbers 27 and 8, the exception clause of numbers 27 and 8, let's say if a person has an Egyptian father and a mother who's a Jew, we're not even arguing color here, by the way. And by the way, Orthodox Moor doesn't make this about color, so I want to be on record to say he doesn't make it about color. Dante does make it about color, but Moor is not making it about color, to be fair to him, despite everything. When we talked about methodology, I said, if a person has an Egyptian father and a mother who's a Jew, according to the exception clause in Numbers 27:8, if the father were theoretically E1B1B, even though he doesn't descend from Jacob, the father is an Egyptian, he descends from the people of Egypt. If the exception clause is brought into the equation, while the child would not be paternally an Israelite, he would maternally be a part of the community of Israel, and through the exception clause would be counted as a Jew. And his descendants, while having E1B1B, would in theory be Israelites because their father was brought forth through the exception clause. The daughter plays the surrogate son, and this is according to 1 Chronicles chapter 2, 31 through 34 or 35. So I gave him, the benefit of the doubt because Abu had pointed out the argument to me, and I saw the validity in the argument, and I like to be fair. So I told him when I considered it, I thought he did have a point there. Although we cannot always make the exception clause the reasoning of why we have such a large spectrum of diversity within Jewish populations. That just doesn't account for the diversity of population. Most of our conversations centered around DNA, methodology, that sort of thing, and just trying to clear the air about where we're coming from. So Moore recently made a video where he tried to misrepresent me by claiming that I told him that I was good with a Latino Hebrew Israelite group called Ancient Watchmen that, according to him, only believes that Latinos are Israelites, which isn't what, in fact, I'm going to get to that in a minute. On all ends, he's being inaccurate. First and foremost, I don't recall telling him I'm good with Ancient Watchmen. If he's understanding good as me being somehow an associate or something like that, nah. I have disagreements with their doctrinal position. In fact, last year in 2020, I had a conversation with one of the members. I've never spoken to the guy that he showed in the video, the Mexican dude. The other guy isn't Mexican, he's Puerto Rican. His name is Jose Vega. I had a conversation with Jose Vega. The reason why was precisely because of what I'm about to show you guys in a moment. I had a conversation with Jose Vega because I had perceived certain things about him based on I guess perhaps it was in my own misunderstanding of their doctrinal position. And for the record, I have many disagreements with the ancient watchmen, but needless to say, I want this to be on record. So this was from April 28th of last year. I said, as a preface, this post is not an endorsement of Hebrew Israelism, Latino onlyism, i.e., biblical Israelites or Latinos, or whatever other wacky beliefs are out there. So if you're one of those folks and believe the following confirms your position, get all the way out of here. I'd simply like to show the absurdity behind making ethnic claims centered around outward appearance. So I gave an example of a, Moroccan Jew who lived, in West Africa. Who went to West Africa, who formed a community in Timbuktu, and et cetera, et cetera. A guy who morphologically wouldn't fit Dante Fortson's idea of what an Israelite's supposed to look like. What ended up happening was as follows. I had in essence made that post. Jose Vega commented and he says, you clowns are always trying to say that, we believe that only Latinos are Israelites. And I basically said, do you want to have a live discussion? Anyone who knows me knows that if somebody tries to come at me a certain way, I'm going to call them out to have a discussion. So we had a live discussion, and there were many people who were watching that discussion on Facebook. Keep in mind, this all took place on Facebook. We had a very long discussion where I asked him questions. I wasn't hostile towards him, and he wasn't hostile in his responses. When I gleaned his position, I'd asked him, do you believe that Latinos are only Latinos Israelites? He said, no. He said that he believes that there are even African Americans who are Israelites. He believes that there are people who look white who are Israelites, people who look Japanese who are Israelites, people who look, like a variety of different things, people who look like Hindu Indians who are Israelites, et cetera, et cetera. He says the misconception that his group gets is that they, because they put a big emphasis on Latinos, that somehow they only think Latinos are Israelites, and that's not their viewpoint. That's what he told me. He told me that who am I to say who is or isn't a child of God? So when Jose Vega, one of the members of Ancient Watchmen, let me know his position, I started to understand that even if I think he's being inconsistent, at least he's telling me what his position is, right? So I can't misrepresent him and say he didn't tell me this. That happened last year. So I ended up editing this post, and I took out the Latino only part because I didn't want him to take it as a shot towards him and his group. But needless to say, recently, Orthodox Moor claimed that somehow I was affiliated with them because in private, I somehow told him that me and the Ancient Watchmen were, as Orthodox Moor puts it, good. And I don't recall telling him that. He claims that he pressed me on the issue. That's not how it went at all. Our whole conversation regarding Ancient Watchmen began because Orthodox Moor, and I'm going to show the screenshot, appeared on the Ancient Watchmen's YouTube channel where they were talking about DNA, and I just so happened to see that video because I like to watch all different kinds of videos from all different kinds of groups to see what they're saying. I like to I don't take notes because I actually believe what they're saying is valid. I take notes because maybe in the future I may need to address it. So I took notes, and in fact, I shared my findings with Abu on WhatsApp. And this is before I even had my conversation with Moore on July the 2nd. So this was days before having my conversation with Moore. So this is July the 2nd. Here I am showing Abu saying, here is Moore arguing for his position versus a group that argues that the leader of camps and many African American are Canaanites. Interesting point. Orthodox Moore attempts to make an argument for the Natufians. Notice that it says July the 2nd, delivered July the 2nd. All right. And if you give me a second, I'll go ahead and show the other one. And I do apologize if I have to do it this way because some of these aren't numbered, so I have to actually go through the different screenshots. So here I am, same conversation with Abu. I said, this is one of several videos I had watched after he made a video on me to glean his position fully. Very interesting combo. Moore gets into the subject of Sephardim and his mother. Now, during that conversation, which I actually have that video downloaded, in that conversation, the ancient watchmen, again, I don't agree with their position, but even they told Orthodox Moor in the conversation that they don't believe that that they're not only they're not Latino only. They have a very strange position. I'll say that, but nevertheless, it would be wrong to misrepresent them. It would be wrong to misrepresent them. Let me actually do this. If you give me a second. All right, give me a second. I'm just trying to get to the relevant timestamp, y'all, in this video. All right, give me a second, y'all. All right. Hopefully this is the right spot. All right, here we go. So this is the conversation that he had with them. Now keep in mind, in this conversation, they told him, we believe that there are Israelites that are black, that look black, Israelites that are white. He believes that there are even Israelites among African Americans, et cetera, et cetera. And Moore was basically just asking for their methodology, right? He was basically asking for the methodology, asking how they came to their conclusions. And when I had my conversation with Orthodox Moor, I mentioned that conversation because I found it interesting. I did find the conversation interesting. I didn't agree with necessarily with either viewpoint, but I still found the conversation interesting just in terms of methodology. While I don't agree with Ancient Watchmen's methodology, I thought that it was weird when they pointed out that they thought J1, J2, Q, and several other haplogroups were all Israelite haplogroups, which I explained to Moore when we spoke in private, when we had that private conversation, that 4-hour conversation, that I thought that their methodology, Ancient Watchmen's methodology, has problems in it. Because obviously, if Jacob is J1, his descendants aren't going to be like R1B. Well, barring the exception clause of Numbers 27 and 8, his descendants aren't going to be R1B, then Q, then everything else. If you're going with, paternal lineage, strict paternal, it's going to be difficult. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think Ancient Watchman also believes in maternal, paternal. I think they have a view that might be a little similar to Moore's. I'm not quite sure about that. But in this conversation, they made it clear that they're not Latino only. That's not their viewpoint. They may primarily focus on Latinos, but that's not their viewpoint. And they said that, and Moore heard them say that. If I could, I'm going to play some of this and you guys can hear it for yourselves, because he seemed to be misrepresenting their position. And again, I'm not doing this as a defense for them, because I think their positions are a bit wacky themselves. But to be fair, to be honest, just in the same way that I've tried to be honest with Moore, I wanted to show this. And I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you in a little bit the poor methodology on Moore's end. All right, so here we go.
But the reason is that the question is, why are these brothers coming to us in secret? Why? Because they're afraid.
JJ 7000, who was
Here, bro.
cursing out everybody. That's not nothing holy. That's not something separate. Like, you could tell there's something bugged out about those brothers on the streets, just cursing people out, talking about putting people in chains, charging people for Passover, like making millions of dollars. Like, people don't understand. Like, a lot of these people, like IUIC, they're in the millions of dollars now for doing the same thing that they claim the Christian church did to us. They're doing it now, being hypocrites. Like, you guys are acting like merchants.
Oh, he hit him with the merchant Canaanite joint. Okay, so
exactly.
Okay, so just to clarify, right? Like, so when I hear you call somebody a Canaanite dog, you're not talking about them from necessarily like a genealogical standpoint. You're saying like ideologically, you're acting like a Canaanite.
Yes, the way that
well, not necessarily, bro.
Stop
hanging out with that people, which is exactly what goes around.
I don't.
And that's exactly what they say. Oh, no contact order. Just like the Sicari, bro. The Sicari put a no contact order against Jose Vega and myself, aka the Ancient Watchman, bro. They say though no contact order against with Ayash, aka Shamar, and Jose Vega, aka the Dillinger Destroyer, bro. No contact order. Now, why? Even though many brothers from the Sicari come to our inbox, we have conversations, over 2-hour conversations, bro, secretly. Why? Because if the brothers get discovered that they're talking to us, they get kicked out. But the reason is that the question is, why are these brothers coming to us in secret? Why? Because they're afraid they're gonna get kicked out, bro. See, you guys live in fear, bro. That's the thing. Hispanics and natives live in fear that they're gonna get kicked out, excommunicated from a lot of these cults, camps and their offshoots, bro. So, yeah, well, if Judah Natsara is here, bro, tell him to come here instead of you, bro. We're not addressing you. We're not talking about you. We're not, our last. We always say that there's white-looking Israelites, black-looking Israelites, Chinese-looking Israelites, yellow-looking Israelites, bro. All sorts of Israelites, bro. Our people have mixed things.
Just understand, because I think this is where a lot of people misunderstand what you're saying. Because I know I definitely got it misunderstood. My apologies for having done so. So who are the black Israelites that you're talking about? Because from what I understand, y'all are like, you don't do you correct me if I'm wrong. You don't believe that African Americans, from what I understand, let me say like this: you don't believe that African Americans can be Israelites.
No,
well, it depends, bro.
Hold on, wait. We believe that a lot of African Americans know that they're Africans, and we respect that.
Okay.
Now, the ones that we playing her music.
Yeah, that's not me.
The ones that we're saying are biblical Canaanites are the ones that we're saying that are leading a lot of these camps, people like Fopi and things of that nature. They're and even a lot of the Moors.
Oh, so you keep it like on like a spiritual thing, like the way they're acting on certain things like that, like that's
and what they
teach and whatnot,
and what they claim exactly.
Okay.
I didn't want to play everything there, but in that conversation, they basically said that they believe that there are African Americans, certainly not all of them. This is their position, by the way, that there are African Americans who they believe are Israelites. They believe there are black looking Israelites, white looking Israelites, all kind of different looking Israelites. So they said this to him. Now, why am I bringing this up? The reason why I'm bringing this up is because it seemed to be the case that even though they pointed out their position. Now, granted, if one wants to say that they're being inconsistent, that's fine. I personally think that their position is a bit inconsistent, talking about Ancient Watchmen. But one cannot accuse them of having said that they only teach that Latinos are Israelites, because Jose told me that that's not his position. That's not his friend's position. Also, keeping this in mind, Jose told me that him and his partner don't always agree on everything. So one of the things that Moore had pointed out in his video is that Ancient Watchmen, one of the members, the Mexican dude, he teaches that Yahweh is like like Satan or something like that. I actually questioned Jose on that last year. He told me he doesn't believe that, and that he and the other gentleman actually go back and forth. And I believe he said that on his channel, even recently, that he and his partner go back and forth on that. Like they actually argue on those points, that they don't necessarily agree. Now, how much of that is true, I don't know. But I will say that he has said that he doesn't agree with his partner on that. Now, with that being said, I absolutely 1,000,000% do not agree with them on that. Now, to get back to the point, when Orthodox Moor and I had a conversation about Ancient Watchmen, it had to do with the topic of DNA. And it had to do with that particular video that you just watched. There's more to that video. It's a very long video where they have a very long conversation. And they get into various topics and about methodology, et cetera, right? I never told him that I agreed with their position. I told him flatly that I thought that their position had holes in it. And I also told him that I hoped, because we were supposed to do a show on his channel before all of this mess, all of this messiness that he ended up engaging in. I was hoping that we could have a conversation where we could actually get into the topic of methodology and different things of that nature, and that it wouldn't end up, because there were certain portions in this conversation with Ancient Watchmen where it seemed to get a little messy, where it seemed like one side was getting a little triggered, and I mentioned that to him. But throughout that entire conversation, I don't recall Orthodox Moor ever pressing me or telling me or asking me if I'm going to go after them, because for one, just to be on record about this, there are a bunch of groups that I haven't made videos about that I wholeheartedly disagree with. For example, True Nation, couldn't disagree with them more. I've actually had cordial correspondence with one of the members of True Nation, a gentleman by the name of Darash, on Clubhouse. Very cordial correspondence. Having cordial correspondence with him doesn't mean that I somehow agree with his position. And I told him flatly, I don't agree with his position, just as I told Jose Vega when we had our live discussion that I don't agree with his position. Now, the unfortunate thing about the conversation with Jose Vega is that while it was on Facebook, I unfortunately ended up deleting it. I ended up privating it for a personal reason that had nothing to do with my conversation with Jose. It had to do with something completely different. I believe he knows why it was, and there was another person in the conversation who also knows. The video was privated, and I ended up doing something where I deleted the video, and I don't have the video, and I wish I had the video. But I can actually show you guys where to show evidence that I indeed did have a conversation with this gentleman, Jose. Because I certainly, yeah, here we go. And this was from last year. This was from April of 2020. And Ben Cuevas, who's a guy who's, I guess, associated with them, said, "Are you going to post the dialogue you and Jose Vega had yesterday? Thank you, my Ach." So what was my response? Let me see. Yeah, here we go. And so I mentioned why. Oh, so it was Dawad was the one that was in the conversation. All right, here we go. So my response was, had to private it, bro. I explained to Jose and Dawad why, personal reasons, which had nothing to do with the combo with Jose at all. Thanks for asking. I totally understand. Okay, thank you for inviting me to it. It was edifying. And the reason he said it was edifying is because the conversation was cordial. At no point in time were we being disrespectful towards one another. We were just having a cordial correspondence in terms of dialogue, not in terms of me agreeing with him. I didn't agree with his positions. However, I did ask him to clarify a lot of his views. So, for example, I asked him who did he believe true Israelites were. He believed that Israelites are scattered into all nations. He believes they look like a variety of different things. He says that they primarily focus on Latinos and Native Americans because those are the groups that he believes are targeted the hardest by the camps, and they disagree with the camps. However, he doesn't just relegate it to Latinos or Native Americans. He says that anybody essentially could be an Israelite, and he doesn't say who is or isn't. Ultimately, that's up to God. That's what he told me. But needless to say, I certainly don't agree with all of Jose's positions. I definitely have issues. But if the question is why I haven't made videos, well, the same reason I haven't made videos on True Nation, I haven't made videos on various other groups. In fact, ironically enough, Orthodox Moor, I haven't made videos on Yara, who's a member of the YHWH War Machine. I haven't made videos on Yehukanan. I haven't made videos on Anonymous Hebrew. I haven't made videos on a lot of people. The mere fact of me not making a video on someone doesn't mean that I agree with them. I certainly don't. But needless to say, I can still have cordial correspondence with people, even if we have differing beliefs. You yourself are a witness to this, a testament to this, because you have cordial correspondence with Abu, and you don't agree with Abu in terms of his theology. Would it be cheapery to accuse you of somehow being affiliated or associated with Abu because you don't make you have actually made videos on Abu, but say you didn't make a video on Abu and somebody accused you of being affiliated with him. You have a bunch of videos that you haven't made on a variety of different groups. Does that somehow mean that you agree with those groups because you haven't made videos? Of course not. That's flawed reasoning, terrible reasoning. But let's deal with something though. It's ironic that Dante's whole argument on these gentlemen had to do with them talking about African Americans being Canaanites. And isn't it coincidental that our friend Dante reshared a video recently where another Hebrew Israelite accused other Hebrew Israelites that they disagreed with of being Canaanites? Let me actually show you this. Dante reshared this on his community tab. Let me actually pull it up. Just give me a second. Yeah, here we go. This is Dante Fortson accusing or resharing a video. Let me be more exact. Resharing a video which accuses certain Hebrew Israelites that he disagrees with of being Canaanites. Beware of the COINTELPRO agents among Israel teaching crazy and false doctrine. Now, this is after the fact because Dante has an issue with this guy, Issachar. He's accused Issachar of being COINTELPRO, a bunch of other things. But look at the title of the video, Canaanites in Israel. And it gives various names. And then this guy, Issachar. The reason he's going after Issachar is because Issachar reshared some of Abu's videos on his channel dealing with the pews. And somehow he thinks that this means that Issachar is in league with us. When no, that's not the case at all. He simply said that he agreed with the arguments that Abu was presenting for what was not or was not on the pews in terms of just sheer methodology. He thought that the arguments were well put together, had nothing to do with Abu's doctrinal position, and he gave Abu credit where credit was due. So Dante begins to attack Issachar and bring up all these crazy things. So here's Dante. You see it right there, Dante Fortson, resharing a video where he's accusing these gentlemen of, or accusing all these, the men and women here of being Canaanites, even though all these people agree with him on the identity doctrine regarding African Americans. That's the hilarity of all this. All right, so there's that. So is Dante being consistent? Does this mean that now Dante thinks African Americans are Canaanites because he's sharing a video from someone else who accuses African Americans of being Canaanites? Does this mean that Dante now agrees with everything this person holds to by the same flawed reasoning? I mean, if we're going to be consistent here, let's be consistent. If you're going to accuse people, then I think the finger can be pointed at Dante Fortson. But interestingly enough, right? Here's Dante Fortson. And for the record, I've never been a member of Ancient Watchmen. I am not an affiliate of Ancient Watchmen. Have I had cordial correspondence with them? Of course. Like I've had cordial correspondence with Orthodox Moor. I've had cordial correspondence with Darash of True Nation, who I believe True Nation holds to the tenets of One Westism. Having cordial correspondence doesn't mean you agree with somebody. Having cordial correspondence means that you can have a respectful dialogue where you can respectfully agree to disagree, you know, and again, it doesn't have to turn into tomfoolery. So this is what Dante reshared in one of his most recent videos. Here's Dante accusing me of being alleged camp member. And in this case, by camp, he's accusing me of being a member of a Mexican Israelite camp. Because he basically said, he basically reshared Orthodox Moor's most recent video on me, where Moore says that I'm somehow never going to make videos against Ancient Watchmen, which isn't true at all. I never said that to Moore. Never said I wasn't going to make videos against them. Here you see where Dante then takes that and runs with it. Now, here's the thing. Anybody that knows me knows that I oppose anybody who tries to make the identity claim a priority. So let me show you examples of me going back and forth with those who believe that Latinos are Israelites, because they're of the belief that I only go after African Americans who make these claims. Well, let me debunk that very quickly. You do something real quick. I just have a lot of screenshots here, y'all. Y'all just give me a moment. All right. Here's me debating one of them. You can actually hear me debating them. This was from last year. All right. Let me actually do it this way. Give me a second, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and reshare a video where I am debating one of these guys. All right. And this is one of the Tanakh. If I'm not mistaken, I think this guy was Tanakh only Hebrew Israelite, who also believes in Latinos being Israelites. And, you know, he's got his own strange views, very, very strange views. He puts a heavy priority on Latinos and Native Americans. So just give me a second. I just got to Just let me see if I could. I just can't see the timestamp. For some reason, this thing is not showing up. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do it this way. Let me actually share it the other way with this other player. I'm going to do this different way. So this is an interaction that I had with one of these guys, and he happened to be Mexican, by the way. All right, give me a second. And while I put this in VLC player, so I'm going to put this in VLC player. I'm going to make this smaller so people can actually see it. So here's an example of me going back and forth with one of these guys. So I'm going to go to about, let me get the timestamp. I believe this, yeah, 1:45:35. All right, here we go. Yep, here we go. All right, I'm going to show this on my screen. Hopefully you guys can see this. All right. All right, give me a second. I'm going to run this to my sound mix so you guys can hear and judge for yourselves. I'm going to do this with another video in a moment. All right, here we go. Do you hear me talking? Where is your claim of being an Israelite, sir? You said 2nd Ezra 13. Hold on, pay attention. I'll deal with your argument to show you that even if you make an appeal to 2nd Ezra, it's faulty.
We can go over the curses too.
Okay, the curses that don't apply to you?
They do.
Oh, they do? Okay, the curses apply to you. So every one of those curses, if you read in that chapter, are attached to the land. How are those curses applicable to you if they are attached to the land?
I'm not denying that they didn't take place. And not only
we're going to appeal, actually, but people are too low to the 2nd Ezra to try to fund his voyage to find the new land. He thought and expelled it because they were trying to get the one up on the spice trade.
That's why he's worshiping Josephus.
Fam, you don't even know what you're talking about. You claim to be an Israelite with no proof, and you're making an appeal to 2nd Ezra.
What about Revelation?
What does Revelation have to do with you being an Israelite?
Because you're an idolater.
No, it has nothing to do with you being an Israelite. So then why don't you go ahead and prove that you're an Israelite? 2nd Ezra is not doing it for you. I already told you during the time of Josephus was an actual Levite who was in the temple. Josephus says that the tribes, the 10 lost tribes, were in the regions surrounding where Judea was, in those other countries. He says that they were in those roundabout regions. So
is that why Jesus said that his father's house was Herod's temple?
First of all, what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? Not that I agree with the assertion at all about you being an Israelite, because I need you to prove that you're an Israelite. The whole point was, before we get to any other topic, you need to 100% prove that you're an Israelite, and you haven't done that yet. You're making assertions, but you're not actually proving your claim. I'm rebutting your assertions and showing the flaws in them, the holes in your argument. There's no evidence of you being an Israelite.
I already showed Deuteronomy 28 and 2nd Ezra.
Okay, Deuteronomy 28. Let's look at that real quick. Deuteronomy 28, we're going to debunk this assertion very easily.
It's something that I don't even want to talk about. If you don't want to believe I'm a
no, it's that if you're going to make a claim,
I could say, okay, if you don't want to believe,
if you're going to prove, if you're going to prove your claim,
I'm not here to prove nobody.
America, in South America, do you know that Q haplogroup is not Western Asian in origin? Do you know that Arabians, you believe the Arabians are Ishmael, right?
Yeah.
The historical region of DNA are not in the Torah, but the concept of DNA.
Jesus Christ.
No, we're going to find out if you're an Israelite or not. So let's deal with that.
You're a Hebrew, but you're still teaching Jesus.
I never said I was a Hebrew, number one. And number two, you have yet to substantiate your claim of being an Israelite. Until you substantiate your claim, you, sir, are not going to move this conversation away from the relevant salient point that we are addressing right now, which is your claim of being an Israelite.
All you're talking about is that natives are not Hebrews and that talking about Arabs.
Look,
talking about
let's put it this way: you have yet to demonstrate your claim of being an Israelite or the claim of Native Americans supposedly being Israelites.
I already went.
So there you have an example of me arguing with someone who believes that Native Americans are Israelites and that other stuff. So anybody saying that I just target African Americans is completely wrong, because I have these conversations with a variety of different people, including those from the what's alleged to be the Latino only side. All right, so that's one. Let me actually show another one. So this is from anybody that knows this guy knows that his position is that he thinks Latinos are Israelites. So there's a guy named Jeremias A. Cambal. He generally hangs around Judah Natsara and some of those guys, and I think he's also affiliated with the Ancient Watchmen in some capacity. I could be wrong about that. I actually called him out last year. And this is the screenshot of our conversation. Here we go. I said, last night I made a live stream which you avoided like the plague. You were called out several times to defend your position, but you refused. So, and keep in mind, Jeremias believes that Native Americans and Latinos are Israelites. And I'm opposing him, telling him, prove to me that Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites. So since you want to continue to hide behind text, this is my answer. Let's set up a live discussion tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. your time, if you're on the West Coast, and I will address your questions with sources and genetic evidence. Please do not back out of this one as well. So Jeremias believes in this Latino Hebrew Israelite thing. So let me actually show something else. All right. So that's that. I'm going to actually show me going back and forth with Jeremias. Jeremias also has a very strange belief of the Tetragrammaton being satanic. So since Orthodox Moor had brought up that gentleman the guy from Ancient Watchmen thinking that Jesus, or not Jesus, that the God of the Old Testament is somehow Satan. Well, here I am arguing with another guy who holds to the idea of Mexicans and Latinos being Israelites, and I'm arguing with him against his wild assertions against the Tetragrammaton. All right, here we go. If I could find the I had it here, now I don't have it, but I am going to go ahead and show my correspondence with him if I could. Okay, so here we go. This is me and Jeremias going back and forth. He believes Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites, and I imagine he may even agree with the idea of Canaanites being African Americans being Canaanites. I could be wrong on that. If he watches this and he would like to correct me, he's more than welcome. But here's this is me responding to Jeremias Akambal. I said, no offense, bro, but this is one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. The argument used by Henry Makow and Tex Marr, men who didn't know Hebrew and were ignorant of the basic grammar of the language, similar to yourself. Allow me to explain. And so I gave the example of how Yahweh is the third person construction of the verbal higher root, the to be root, whereas Ehye is the first person construction of the same root, of the exact same root. The first person construction means I am, or I who caused to be. And the third person means he is, or he who causes to be. This is a simple Hebrew 101 fact that GOCC, who also doesn't understand the basics of the language, because they also argue against the Tetragrammaton, YHWH. GOCC teaches that YHWH is satanic. Misses. These are also the sort of arguments that make you look completely unlearned in the eyes of those who have actually studied the language. It's a textbook example of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Do yourself a favor and educate yourself. People who don't actually know Hebrew should refrain from arguing these topics. And then I linked them to the article by Michael Heiser, who's an actual scholar of Hebrew, where he talks about the Tetragrammaton and he explains this very simple feature of grammar. So again, here I am arguing with somebody who believes Latinos and Native Americans are Israelites, and I'm showing him not only that his claim is false, but I've also challenged him to debate on his ethnicity and all this other stuff that I do with Hebrew Israelites who are African American, or African Americans who claim to be Hebrew Israelites. So all this tomfoolery that I somehow endorse Ancient Watchmen or their views is foolishness. I've argued with people who are their affiliates. I've even had a conversation with them, and I asked Jose Vega questions about his doctrinal position. But interestingly enough, what I find fascinating is, I feel like I'm leaving something out. A lot of this was prompted because of the fact that Moore made his video. He literally, I wouldn't even know how to explain it. He saw that I extended an olive branch to him. Now, generally, if somebody extends an olive branch to you, the last thing that you're going to want to do is make an attack video on them. The reason why Orthodox Moor is making up these claims now, which ironically enough, when he made his first few videos, had nothing to say about ancient watchmen or me supposedly being so-called affiliated with them. But now that he's upset, and I'm going to tell you why he's upset. I ended up telling Abu, I'm not rocking with that dude Moore anymore. He's inconsistent. I think he's deceptive. And when I saw him on Clubhouse, he tried to come into one of my rooms. I kicked him out because I'm like, yo, you're not going to come in this room acting like we're all good when you just made an attack video on me after I extended an olive branch to you, after I went out of my way to try to be cordial with you. You're going to try to make an attack video on me and misrepresent what you said to me, and what you said to us, I should say, in the conversation. You initially said that you don't agree with Dante Fortson's stipulation, and now you make a public video saying you do agree. That's double-minded. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. And more, if you have that conversation recorded, if you think I'm just making this up, I would implore you to put up the conversation. Hopefully you haven't edited the conversation. I didn't record the conversation. Hopefully you did. If you recorded that conversation, please put that conversation up so that people can hear for themselves what actually happened, if indeed you did record it. I didn't ask you that day if you recorded it. If you did, however, then I would ask you to be forthright and show people the conversation. Because I have a witness here in 93 who was there for the last hour, who saw where you disagreed with Dante's stipulation, and then you go and make a video claiming that you do think it's a valid stipulation, which is foolishness. Double-minded. All right. Let me actually show the following. So what ended up happening was, after he made his video, he seems to be curious about why I didn't want to come on his channel. I told Abu I'm no longer going to appear on his channel because I was actually going to show up on his channel to have a conversation, not his channel, on a Debate Talk for You, or one of these channels. Either it was his channel or Debate Talk. We were going to have a conversation about methodology, DNA, et cetera, a very cordial conversation where I was actually planning on being forthright and saying, out of everybody's methodologies, I think Orthodox Moors is the least problematic, or the one that probably presents the least amount of problems. Because if he's basically saying you could be an Israelite on your father's side, your mother's side, or if you're a convert, or if your DNA somehow lines you up with those communities, then how do you argue against that position? That position is pretty open to anybody. At that point, you can make arguments for just about any group of people. I mean, if you want to be honest. But when I saw how disingenuous Orthodox Moor was, I decided, no, I'm not going to do it. This is complete waste of time. I ended up seeing him on Clubhouse. I kicked him out of the room. I blocked him because I didn't want this guy trying to add me or trying to communicate me, especially when he just made a public video and didn't even, I mean, bro, like, that's not what you said in private. At that point, he decides to switch the narrative and this is a tactic that when I did a little investigating on Moore, I realized is something that he's done before with others. So this is on Dante's community tab. After Dante had said something, about me, about my video, he tried to mock like some of the views that my video, like the amount of views that my video got. So Orthodox Moor said, "Poor faithful, we knew him well. RIP. Plantation apologetics." Now, why is that significant? Plantation apologetics hashtag. This is the same thing that he said to Berean back when he and Berean had a small falling out because Berean was supposed to bring him on his channel and somehow didn't bring him on. So Moore felt slighted by that. And then he made a video where he attempted to attack Berean. I'm gonna show you that in a second. The name of the video. Let me actually get the name of the video. Here we go. Moore ended up making a video. Yeah, here we go. This is the name of the video right here. I took a screenshot. The Finesse versus the Fugazi, Plantation Apologist, right? In this video, he decides that he's going to take some shots at Berean and question Berean on his, whatever. In this, Abu actually left him a comment. Abu actually leaves some pretty good comments to this guy, and some of these things end up going over his head. I don't think he's thinking about this. When he's upset, I don't think he's thinking logically. I think he tends to. Abu even pointed out the faultiness of saying that Dante has a point with his stipulation of me having to prove I'm Puerto Rican, which is foolishness. So here's what Abu says. Let me actually see if I could expand this. So Abu says, greetings. Permit me to share a few minor comments, clarifications. First, I don't think it's accurate to describe me as being part of Berean's inner circle. By the way, by the same criteria, does this now mean that because Dante is resharing Orthodox Moor's videos, Orthodox Moor is now a part of his inner circle? Do you see how faulty that line of reasoning is? So it seems like Moore tries to make an appeal to conspiracy anytime he has a problem with somebody. And in this case, it would be faulty conspiracy, both in Berean and in my case. And I honestly doubt Berean considers me a part of his inner circle. Don't get me wrong. I admire Berean greatly. And if we ever develop an online friendship in the future, I'd like to be on. I'd be honored. But I'm just clarifying that it strikes me as inaccurate to describe me as currently part of his inner circle. I would offer this analogy. In the past, Berean brought Israelites onto his show, to present arguments that he felt mainstream Christians needed to grapple with. Some Christians were upset by that and wrongly concluded that he was on the brink of going Israelite himself. Analogously, Berean has brought on others, including myself, to present arguments that he feels certain Israelites need to address, as it seems some Israelites had a similar reaction to that of certain aforementioned Christians before them. To find the common thread, I think we need to take Berean at his word that his interest is dialogue. That's precisely one of the things I respect about Berean, his willingness to bring on a variety of worldviews and foster dialogue and debate on related topics. Suppose next year he gets interested in the challenges posed by Orthodox Muslims and brings on some sharp dawah givers, ergo, hypothetically speaking, Adan, Rashid, Shabir Ali, etc. If Christians and Israelites alike balked and accused Berean of being too close to Muslims, they will have misunderstood what he was doing. Second, I don't see why Berean has to be a part of the Israelite spectrum to call out Brown and Kelly on the Katz fiasco, i.e. William Brown pretending to be a Tel Aviv-based Hebrew professor, which recently, I believe, even more in his conversation with Abu pointed out was not a good look for them. In an attempt to illustrate why, consider this thought experiment. Imagine if instead of Brown and Kelly, I brought out a secret scholar that others felt was a clear fabrication. I doubt many would argue that because Berean's not Catholic, he shouldn't be the one to call on me to improve on that controversy, i.e. the controversy would not have to be handled strictly in-house by Catholics alone. Rather, Berean would be within his rights to publicly object. The same would be the case if a fake scholar controversy swirled around Garfield, i.e. that need not be handled in-house by atheists or agnostics alone. With that in mind, just as non-Catholic Berean has the right to publicly question Catholics, and theist Berean has the right to publicly question agnostics and atheists, so too non-Israelite Berean should have the right to publicly question Israelites, and so forth. So this was Moore's response to that. Moore's response was as follows, and keep in mind, this is when he was upset at Berean. Now look at some of the flawed reasoning that he presents here. First, I in no way meant to suggest you and Berean are friends. Honestly, it would be none of my business if you were. However, he clearly has chosen to use your content to supplement his former content, which is ironic because by the same criteria, if Berean has chosen to bring Dante on so Dante can present his arguments, does that mean that he's supplementing his content with Dante's content? I mean, is it only good if he's supplementing his content with Dante's content and not anyone else or anybody who holds to a pro-Israelite view? I mean, this is just outlandish reasoning. I have no issue with in any way, shape. I have no issue within any way, shape, or form. My issue, as clearly stated, was Berean taking the authoritative stance on orthodoxy while clearly having no credibility on the issue. Not only that, but doing so from an obvious place of spite, which is ironic because this is what Moore is doing. He's now trying to chime in on people's motives from a place of spite based on the fact that after we had a cordial correspondence, he decided to make a public video where he took a shot at me, accused me of something that I wasn't doing, and then misrepresented something that was said in a conversation. In this case, the idea that Dante Fortson was right in his stipulation when he never said that to me when we were in private. And he also never said anything, in fact, he said the opposite. He thought that the stipulation was outlandish. But then when he makes a public video, I guess to get brownie points with Dante and some of those other guys over there, he decides to say that Dante is within his rights because, well, Faithful questions Israelites on their ethnicity claims, even though those objections have to do with theology because that's what they're basing it on. So I think Faithful should be questioned on his being Puerto Rican, even though my being Puerto Rican is not a theological claim. And I didn't just willy-nilly wake up one day and decide I'm going to be Puerto Rican today. And not only that, the way I go about determining who is and isn't a Puerto Rican is remarkably different than the way Dante goes about defining who is or isn't an Israelite. I think he bases it on morphology and his own weird sense of what he thinks. I don't know if he determines it through paternal lineage, maternal lineage, however he goes about doing it. It seems like he puts more credence, more weight in phenotype, in skin tone, in hair texture, rather than in anything else. But as he says here, I understand Berean's persona of being a bridge builder. However, for my perch of actually trying to build bridges, which is ironic because he burned a bridge with me. Moore ended up burning a bridge with me by making a video taking a shot at me just a few days after an olive branch was extended to him. He seems to be more of a bridge burner by habit. I took Berean at his word and even publicly encouraged him in his comment sections to keep pressing on the cats issue until during one of his lives where he was speaking about cats in the pews, of which you were on the panel, he said about 4 or 5 times during the live that he would send me the link and never did. Even after you had recommended getting in touch with Anonymous Hebrew, Berean just sent me an email saying he had me locked in, but never sent a link to any show where he was talking about the pews. Maybe he forgot. I mean, you ever thought about sometimes people forget? They're so caught up in the moment that they forget. It's like nothing against you, man. But this is how he gets down. Like when Moore feels offended, he then decides like it's okay to start taking shots at people. And sometimes even trying to impugn on their motives when he himself, when Moore, if we're going to be honest here, has shaky motives himself, right? Position of the pews. What did he say? I was never sent a link to any show where he was talking about the pews. I was the first in my community to call a spade when it came to cats. The only reason for Berean not to bring me or an anonymous to speak on the pews is because we take the position that there are multiple languages on the pews and don't rule out Hebrew. Well, if that's the case, then why would Berean bring on Benaiah and all these other guys who take a position of language being on the pews? I don't think his argument I don't think him not bringing you on had anything to do with the pew thing, the language on the pews or not language on the pews. He probably just forgot, to give him the benefit of the doubt. But it seems like a lot of you guys like to assume the worst and then run with the assumption rather than actually trying to consider all the possible viewpoints at play. I see the bias in Berean, the irony there, and respectfully disagree with you on his motives. If it was all about information, he could be moving totally different. I say this as someone who tries hard not to move with unequal scales, even though right now Berean is treating me with unequal scales by not only misrepresenting what we talked about in private, but now he's doing it from a place of, I guess, apparent hurt because of something that he did himself. The reason why he and I aren't on good terms has to do with him. By him making a video where he takes a shot at me after we had just extended olive branches to one another, leads me to believe that he has this sort of personality where he's either just a contrarian by nature, he's just contentious, or he just likes to do this to, stir up drama. I don't know if he's doing it for views. I don't know why he's doing it, but needless to say, it's wrong. Second, in no way, shape, or form did I say Berean couldn't go at Pastor Kelly or Moray Brown because he is not an Israelite. Hence, I was publicly encouraging him to press the situation for all to see. I have never said you couldn't critique Pastor Kelly or Moray Brown and have defended you to my community in multiple videos. The issue with Berean is he is not making any scholastic arguments or adding anything to that nature of the conversation, which is ironic because Moore's attacks on me aren't scholastic. They're centered on false assumptions, and on top of that, trying to impugn my motive, when in a moment you're going to see how this is going to backfire if we use Moore's methodology, where he says multiple video. Where was it? Encourage you. Scholastic arguments or adding anything to that nature to the conversation. He has also made it clear that he has separated himself from the whole community, not just Pastor Kelly, Moray Brown, Sister E, and Dante. This is around the time when Berean was saying he was going to block all Israelites. Now, to be fair, I thought Berean was being a little hasty in what he did, because what certain people who self-identify as Israelites did wrong has no bearing on others. And we're going to get into some of that as well as this goes along. Community willing go on. Let me actually. He also made it clear that he separated himself from the whole community, not just Pastor Kelly, Moray Brown, Sister E, and Dante. He also has made it clear that he will be pressing a lot of rhetoric like there are no righteous people in my community willing to call out any nonsense. Him knowing that there were people that not only called it out, but gave an alternate narrative and were willing to sit down with you and really work to clarify the arguments is a bit disingenuous at best and deceptive at worst, which is ironic coming from Moore, given what he's doing now. Is my community squeaky clean? Of course not. Hence, I said there will be things done to press the narrative of accountability in that regard from my end, such as commentary videos and the like. I will also be interviewing more people involved in the matter, like Pastor Kelly, etc., and getting more clarity publicly on the matter, as I have been right all along. Even if people don't like me or disagree with me, most of the time they will still end up respecting me because of how respect me because of how even-handed I try to move. I can't in good confidence say the same about Berean at this point. I have nothing against him. But when one voluntarily draws a line in the sand, they should stay on their side of the line unless they want action. Last but not least, his stance on orthodoxy and his willingness to comment on people being saved or not, and backing such behavior on his channel was the last straw for me. One thing I highly respect about you, Abu, is that you leave salvation to the sovereignty of God. I have no issue defending you to my community when you make good arguments, and at least have the decency to not put people in heaven or hell. Peace. Now, here's the ironic part. So he's saying all that, but then you have a guy like Dante, who, if you disagree with him, you don't believe in Jesus. You have to agree with his interpretation of how he, I guess, misinterprets passages on what he assumes is skin color and other things. And yet I don't see Orthodox Moor making videos against Dante. Now, would it be fair? Would it be cheaper of me to say, because he hasn't made a video on Dante Fortson, therefore he agrees with Dante Fortson in the way that he's moving? Of course not. That would be wrong of me. In the same way, I believe it's wrong of Orthodox Moor to disingenuously reinterpret the way that the conversation went down in light of what was actually said, and then try to paint the narrative of one, like trying to impugn on my motives by pointing out a group with some wacky beliefs, and then basically saying that because I told him in private, I was the one that mentioned Ancient Watchmen in our conversation. And the only reason I brought them up was because we were having a conversation on their video, on their conversation on DNA. I mentioned the video that he had a conversation with them on. I had already watched the video before I even had the conversation with Orthodox Moor, and I mentioned why I thought I thought that the methodology was a bit strange, you know. And I also mentioned where I heard him make certain arguments and everything like that, and I thought that he did a good job of asking them questions. I thought that Moore was interested in finding out what they believed. And at the time, I thought that, hey, maybe this guy really is just all about trying to get everyone's side of the matter and trying to, evenly deal with the information. But then after what's gone on now, I don't know what this guy's motives are. I will say that they're all over the place. I certainly don't know if there's any purity. If his motives were pure, he certainly wouldn't be behaving this way. And for the record, I've also called out people who many Hebrew Israelites would reject as Jews, such as Ashkenazis. So, for example, this is a woman named Ruth Whitgate. She was attacking the Apostle Paul, casting aspersions on the Apostle Paul's Israelite ethnicity. And I presented several arguments. And I said, again, this is special pleading on your end. Moreover, since we're on the topic of people being bloodline Israelites, what is your evidence of being an Israelite? So notice that I'm questioning her on her claim of ethnicity because she's questioning the claim of the Apostle Paul. Here you have an Ashkenazi woman. I'm questioning her claim. So I don't just do this with Hebrew Israelites. I do this with anybody who tries to use ethnicity or lineage as some sort of battering ram. So I don't just merely make it about Hebrew Israelites. Here I'm doing this with a person who is, a person who is Ashkenazi. Lest any of the Hebrew Israelites claim I've never gone after Ashkenazis. All right. I feel like there's something else that I needed to bring out. Like there's something else. So now we get to a very salient point. If the idea that you're cordial to someone somehow means you're affiliated with them and that somehow you must agree with everything they have to say, by that same criteria, does this mean that Orthodox Moor now completely agrees with everything Abu believes in? Of course not. That would be flawed reasoning. In fact, the fallacy that Orthodox Moor is committing is called the association fallacy. It's a fallacy. The assumption being that you're going to impugn on someone based on their perceived association with something or trying to associate them with something, and it's cheapery. It's a cheap argument. It's a bad argument. One, I don't agree with Ancient Watchmen. I'm not affiliated with them. Have I had cordial correspondence with them? Of course. Like I've had cordial correspondence with a variety of other people. Darash from True Nation. I've had cordial correspondence with a gentleman named Jonathan, who's a member of Sharpening Swords. Their viewpoints are very similar to One Wester's. We've had cordial correspondence. Does that mean I agree with Jonathan's position? Of course not. It's bad argumentation. But needless to say, let me show something. So let me show you how this cheapery works if one wanted to employ the same flawed reasoning. So here is Tazarah. This is a gentleman who Dante Fortson is planning on doing a live stream with. He's going to do a live stream tomorrow to try to bring out more sources. I hope that he actually interacts with the information that 93 and I brought out in the last video we did and not ignore it and just keep trying to throw out more claims and more claims to play this little game of let's see how many claims we could toss out. Basically, carpet bomb us with information and never actually deal with any of the points that are being raised against their information when it's actually vetted, fact checked, etc. So this is Tazarah. This is on Lipstick Alley. I don't know what this dude is doing on Lipstick Alley, but I was able to find him through Google search. Now look what he says right here. This was from October 21st of 2020. Now he says, now the person who he's responding to says, they use it to justify them dating non-women too. I've heard them say they can build their nation with non-black women because you the seed of your father. They have said they don't need black women. So he says the Bible says that a person is what their father is. Same goes for every other race of people as well. If the quote unquote white man has a baby with a black woman, then according to the Bible, that baby is white. Now keep in mind, these are views that Orthodox Moor doesn't hold to. Now, Dante is doing a video with Orthodox Moor tomorrow. Does Dante doing a video with Orthodox Moor now mean that he agrees with Tazarah's viewpoints on this subject? And by extension, does this mean that we should be expecting a video from Orthodox Moor correcting Tazarah on this? Now, he says, now keep in mind, Orthodox Moor's viewpoint is that you're an Israelite on your father's side, your mother's side, or if you're a convert. Even if you're a convert, you're still an Israelite according to him, not according to Tazarah. If a white man, quote unquote, white man has a baby with a black woman, then according to the Bible, that baby is white. A quote unquote white baby with black features. Nobody uses those scriptures to justify anything. The Bible says what it says. The Bible is against race mixing. But in the event that it does happen, the child is what the father is. And then he quotes the he quotes Ezra 2:59 in the Bible, and then Numbers 1:18, right? Now watch this. Dante said earlier that he doesn't believe in Israelite only salvation. Well, let's see what Tazarah believes. Does Tazarah believe in Israelite only salvation? Let's see. So this is Tazarah. Look what he says. This is from November of last year. Salvation is only for Israel. Notice Tazarah. Salvation is only for Israel. Christ only came for Israel. Matthew 15:24. And I will be doing a video to refute Tazarah's bad interpretation of that as well, since it's the bad interpretation that the camps have. Remember, Dante claims to not agree with the camp understanding, yet he's doing a video tomorrow for a person who does agree with the camp understanding. Does that mean that Dante now endorses the camp understanding since he's doing a video tomorrow with a person who does agree with the camp understanding? Do you see how that would be a cheap argument to use? Do you see how this sort of cheapery is not good argumentation? But since Dante likes to point the finger at others, is this not an example of Dante being double-minded? A lot of you appear to have accepted your Hebrew/Israelite identity, but are still holding to the false doctrine of Christianity. God makes it clear in multiple prophecies that the Gentiles will be forced to serve Israel in the kingdom or be completely destroyed. God does not lie, contradict himself, or go back on his word. And then he misquotes Isaiah 60:11-12, which I will do a video about on this channel in the future to show how Tazarah's understanding of that passage is flawed and centered on the bad understanding of the camps. But notice what he says. Tazarah says salvation is only for Israel. And this is from Lipstick Alley, November 12th of last year. All right. But let's use again the methodology. Is Orthodox Moor endorsing is Dante Fortson endorsing Tazarah's position? And if so, should we expect Orthodox Moor to make a video correcting Tazarah if he's going to be consistent, since Orthodox Moor doesn't believe in Israel only salvation? I find it telling. I find it interesting. I again wonder, what's going to be done. But needless to say, I would like to see how Dante Fortson answers that. In fact, I will try to tag him into a community post after this stream is done, and I'll show him the relevant. Screenshot, and we'll see how he addresses it. All right. With that being said, there was another video that I did. Let me just point this out again. Here's me questioning another person who is. So this is Hokmah or Chakma, Zebulon Israel, who used to go by the name of Gedaliah. He's a former member of IUIC. He and I had a conversation where I questioned him on his ethnic claims. And this was last year. I'm going to show the video in a moment. All right. And I'm not going to play the video, but if anyone wants to watch it, it's on the I forget what the name of this channel is. I know the brother changed the name of the channel. Give me a second. It is on the Cult Watch channel. The Cult Watch channel. If you give me a second, I'll go ahead and screen share so you guys can actually find the channel and the relevant video. So here, I'm questioning the gentleman that you just saw on his identity claim. All right, here we go. The name of the video is... Are You Really a Jew? And it can be found on the Cult Watch channel. I think this is formerly the Faith and Grace channel, Faith and Grace Ministries, which is run by the brother George former leader of the GOCC Australia camp. Are you really a Jew? This is from September of last year. And this is me questioning the gentleman, Hokma, on his claims. And he, again, is a Latino, although I think he believes African Americans are also Israelites. But needless to say, I'm questioning him on his claims. So I don't just question African Americans. All right. For the record, I don't know if I said this earlier. I was never a member of a camp. I was beguiled by the online camp videos. And by camp, I'm referring to the 12 tribe chart camps, plural. Those camps, their videos. You know, the ones that believe African Americans are Israelites, their videos. So when Dante accused me of saying that I had followed the camps, but not the ones that believe African Americans are Israelites, he's absolutely, positively not being honest, not telling the truth. All the groups that I followed, whose videos I watched, I should say, they all believed that African Americans were Israelites. And that was my view at one point. So let that be on record. And if Dante wants to see evidence of this, I can actually show him videos where I've actually said this in the past. Needless to say, let's see what else. Let's see. There was something else. All right, give me a second. Now, what I find interesting is, again, let's use some more of the flawed reasoning here. Orthodox Moor claims to be a Muslim, a Quranist, a Quran-only Muslim. Dante Fortson made a video in 2020, early 2020, accusing Vocab Malone of being a Muslim. And the name of this video is Vocab Muslim Agent or Christian Apologist. So he says, in my opinion, is Vocab a Muslim? Very likely. Is Vocab a Christian? Very likely. The way he reconciles this in his video is by saying that Vocab is somehow into Chrislam. So he believes in this amalgam of Christianity and Islam, that's what Vocab promotes, which is absolutely false. Vocab is against Chrislam. And all of this was based on Dante Fortson looking for something to misrepresent Vocab Malone with, to try to attack him, undermine him. And Dante's infamous for this. So in the same way that Dante is now accusing me of being a member of a Mexican-only Israelite camp, is the same way that he accused Vocab of supposedly being a Muslim, even though he wasn't. Even just as I'm not, and have never been a member of a Mexican-only Israelite camp or any camp at all, because I wasn't a member of a camp. I was beguiled by the 12 tribe chart camps in their videos. Not that I was ever a member of their camp or camps. In the same way that he misrepresented me, he attempted to misrepresent Vocab last year. So Dante has a pattern of behavior of attacking people, falsely accusing people, etc. And the ironic part, yeah, like the brother Jonathan says, I'm not even Mexican. So how could I be a member of a Mexican-only Israelite camp if I'm not Mexican? Foolishness. Let me see what else, man. So if I wanted to engage in cheapery, and I'm not doing this to attack Orthodox Moor, but I'm just saying, if I wanted to engage in cheapery, do you think it would be fair if I grabbed this video right here, right? This is a video that Taharka Bey made on Orthodox Moor. What if I grab this video where Taharka Bey may have misunderstood something that Orthodox Moor said? All right. I hope let me actually, wait, hold on. Give me a second. So Taharka Bey, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the name of the gentleman, did a video where he accuses Orthodox Moor of endorsing LGBTQ stuff. Right? Taharka Bey basically made a video. He took one of Orthodox Moor's Facebook posts this is from 2015. And then as you can see on your screen, right? Now, believe it or not, I understood the nuance behind what Moore was saying in this conversation. And I think it was unfair of Taharka Bey to attack Orthodox Moor in this fashion. But if I wanted to be cheap, I could just grab this video and go around and say, oh, look, Orthodox Moor endorses LGBTQ stuff. You know, look right there. Look, this guy showed a video where he says, I support homotrimony being legally defined for same-sex unions. You know, imagine if I wanted to be cheap and I just isolated that and I decided to attack him. That would be wrong. It would be wrong of me to attack Orthodox Moor for that. Somehow, I honestly don't think he deals with the same even scales, because he took a conversation where what he asserts happened in the conversation didn't actually happen, and then goes out in public, and because he's upset about something that took place between us, which was actually sparked by him, he now decides that he can just misrepresent me. So imagine if I decided to misrepresent him. Do you think that would be right of me as a Christian to do that? Of course not. And I wouldn't do that. But, you know, it's just something interesting to point out. You know, guys from that side should stay away from these kind of cheap arguments. Let me show you another example, okay? So this is from the end of 2020. This is when Judah Natsara came to my channel. Now, Orthodox Moor goes on Judah Natsara's channel. He's friendly. He's cordial with Judah Natsara. Now, what if I were to say Judah Natsara attacks Christians? He doesn't believe in the New Testament. He attacks the New Testament. Would it be fair for me to then say, well, look, Orthodox Moor attacks the New Testament. I mean, Judah Natsara attacks the New Testament. Orthodox Moor goes to his channel. He affiliates with Judah Natsara. Orthodox Moor is against the New Testament, even though he's been on record saying that he's not against the New Testament. Now, what is his stance on the New Testament? That needs to be fleshed out. I don't know how, as a Muslim, even as a Quranist Muslim, or even as a Moorish, Moorish Science Temple-esque kind of Muslim, I don't know how he interprets the New Testament. But would it be cheap of me to just assume that because he wears the title Moor, that he has to take the same position as an Orthodox Muslim, Orthodox Sunni Muslim, an actual Orthodox Muslim? Of course not. It would be cheaper of me. It would be cheaper of me to attack him on that basis, or then say, "Oh, look, he claims to be a Muslim. Muslims claim that the Bible has been corrupted, including the New Testament. Judah Natsara attacks the New Testament. Therefore, Orthodox Moor agrees with Judah Natsara." It would be foolishness and cheapery for me to use that argumentation. It would be an example of the association fallacy, which is what Orthodox Moor is attempting to engage in. All right. But let me actually show this, though. Look at some of the things that Judah Natsara said on my channel, the way that he attempted to attack me. Let me actually show this. Just give me a second. All right, here we go. Here is Judah Natsara saying that he's my Messiah, that he's the Messiah. He's talking crazy in my channel. Now, if I show this, does this mean that now Orthodox Moor agrees with his position? I mean, I'm going to let you guys hear this for yourselves. All right. This is when he came on my channel. Listen to this craziness. No, pay attention. Pay attention. Now, if you said that the Israelites have to have the Torah on their heart, were those Israelites who followed after the Greek customs in the book of Maccabees, were they really Israelites? Or are you going to pretend that they weren't Israelites? Because they weren't following the Torah, yet they were actually physical descendants of Jacob. So how does it follow that in order for you to be an Israelite, it's having the Torah on your heart when those men were actually Israelites and they were in wickedness? Did that stop them from being physical descendants of Jacob, or were they excluded from the covenant which they were breaking? Difference there. Being excluded from the covenant that they were under versus being a physical descendant of Jacob, which is what cats from your side like to claim, that you and other folks are Israelites because you're physically descended from Israel. So if you're physically, I'm not talking about Torah and all that other stuff, because we can certainly get into that. And I'm sure we'll probably have a lot of agreement, more than you are probably willing to admit. But what I want to know is regarding pay attention.
I Bulldog dare you. Get in the debate with me on a neutral platform. You can't mute me and do the Christian witchcraft where you can get your face beat in hardcore and sir, are you gonna put Jesus Christ against Onias III, the Messiah?
Onias isn't the Messiah.
Yes, he is.
Oh no, he isn't.
Yes, he is.
Can you tell me where it says in the Torah, and pay attention, or in the prophets, pay attention, that the Messiah was going to come from Levi as opposed to Judah?
Daniel 9, verse 26.
Daniel 9?
What?
Daniel 9. What about the promise that the Lord, now I'll say I'm going to use your term.
Now look.
Yahweh. No, Yahweh.
Yeah, I know. You're fumbling and bumbling. I know. See?
Where is the,
I know.
What about
Onias III is over your Jesus Christ. Your Jesus Christ would have been bowing down to Onias III.
That Yahweh made with David, that he would never cease to have a ruler from his loins sit on his throne. Where is this ruler that is going to rule that is from his loins, meaning from his lineage?
Okay, now let me answer. That's from King David in the future. Now, your Jesus Christ didn't have no kids.
So why did the Israelites in antiquity?
You're going to ignore what I just said. Your Jesus Christ didn't have no kids.
Breaking difference there. Being excluded.
On your false religion and your witchcraft.
Since you don't deal with the New Testament, we're going to deal on your
there's
terms.
A New Testament?
Pay attention.
Sir,
I'm answering your. I'm answering your question. Please let me answer your question. Let me answer. There's a part in that conversation where he actually says, "I am your Messiah." He screams it really loud, and I found it ironic. I'm going to try to find a timestamp, and at some point in the future, I'll make a video where I actually show the whole conversation. But needless to say, would it be unfair? Would it be cheapery of me to say Orthodox Moor has gone on Judah Natzada's channel? Orthodox Moor is in some capacity affiliated with Judah Natzada. Therefore, Orthodox Moor agrees with everything Judah Natzada says. Do you see how that's a cheap argument? Just because he goes on the guy's channel doesn't mean he agrees with everything he says. It would be wrong of me to use the association fallacy to try to say, well, Judah Natzada believes this, therefore Orthodox Moor must believe it because he goes on his channel. That's just cheap. That's just foolish. So then why would Orthodox Moor attempt to do the same thing with me? I have no idea where this guy is trying to get his reasoning from, but it's very flawed, very bad reasoning. Let me show a few more things. All right. So again, I wanted to use this example. I'm going to go back to this video right here, and I'm going to play a video of how Dante Fortson deals with people who he disagrees with. And I want to see if Orthodox Moor agrees with some of these things, you know, the approach that Dante Fortson is taking. If he doesn't, then there you have a perfect example of somebody who doesn't agree with someone else's approach, despite the fact that Dante Fortson has reshared his videos and everything else. I think it's a cheap argument to simply accuse somebody or try to impugn on their motives simply because of, you know, somebody else sharing their video or having them on their channel. I mean, Orthodox Moor was interviewed by Dante Fortson. Now, what I find ironic, though, however, and I have no problem with two people with differing viewpoints talking with one another and trying to have a dialogue. However, you know what I find interesting? Dante Fortson accused Vocab Malone of being a Muslim, right? He was attacking him on that basis. And he was trying to use that to undermine Vocab Malone. Ironically enough, Dante Fortson a year later has Orthodox Moor on his channel, and he calls the video something like "Understanding Muslim Israelites." You know, how is that the case? Like, you know, you attack Vocab because you assumed he held Muslim beliefs, and you use that as a tool, as a rhetorical device to attack him. But then you do a interview a year later with a guy who identifies as a Muslim, albeit a Quranist Muslim. But now, because he believes he's an Israelite, that's now like you just forgot about the fact that you were using Islam as a rhetorical tool against Vocab. I mean, it's inconsistent, Mr. Fortson. You know, I just wanted to point that out one more time. Okay. So I think there's one more thing I wanted to bring out. Ah, yes. So remember earlier in the conversation, I had mentioned Dante Fortson resharing a video from a person who was claiming that Hebrew Israelites, that certain people in the Hebrew Israelite community are really Canaanites. Well, let me actually do something real quick. This is the video right here. If anybody would like to watch it, so no one can see that I'm making this up. This is the video called Canaanites in quote unquote Israel. Well, not doesn't say quote unquote, but I say quote unquote Israel. And then it gives the names Issachar and Dr. Mumbia, right? So now the video has about 6,000 views. Dante reshared this video. Now, do you know what's fascinating about that? Wasn't Dante accusing me again of because of somehow supposedly I was affiliated with the ancient watchmen and they believe African Americans are Canaanites, that somehow I must agree with their position, which I don't agree with ancient watchmen on their views regarding African Americans, for the record, in case that wasn't very clear to everybody. I definitely don't believe African Americans are Canaanites. But isn't it ironic though that Dante did share a video where in the video, the person is accusing certain African Americans of being Canaanites. In fact, ironically enough, doesn't Orthodox Moor belong to a faith tradition, the Moorish Science Temple, which themselves claim that they're Canaanites? It's funny, in that conversation where they were talking about Canaanites, I don't recall Orthodox Moor correcting the ancient watchmen when they mentioned that there were African Americans who call themselves Canaanites, such as the Moorish Science Temple people. So it says, beware of the COINTELPRO agents among Israel teaching the crazy and false doctrine. This is Dante resharing this video. Canaanites, Klingons amongst us, Canaanites in Israel. Now, why is Dante resharing a video from someone else who claims African Americans are Canaanites? Can someone explain that to me? But then he's accusing me of claiming African Americans are Canaanites. And real quick, 93, if you're there, true or false that Dante Fortson tried to make a faulty correlation with a claim from one of the sources that, matter of fact, we didn't even quote the source, right?
John Badeau.
Yeah, he tried to claim it was John Badeau. Can you tell everybody what Dante Fortson did and how he inadvertently actually showed that he doesn't know how to vet sources? Can you explain to everybody?
Well, initially he didn't do anything. He gave very little response to it. What happened was one of his supporters from the comment section, Tazara, came up and made the claim that I subscribe to the Hamitic race theory because he quoted from the same text, but not from the same author or page number, someone who did that was not Badeau. And guess what? Dante championed that and reshared that on his community post as a knock against our presentation, more specifically Faithful. And he actually basically just blindly went along with Tazara's false premise to paint Faithful as a racist, in addition to what he's charging him now with being a hater of black people, a Mexican Israelite or whatever. Dante reshared it without doing no research or fact checking.
Yes, indeed. And that one really backfired on him very badly. The making an argument for something that we weren't even quoting, that wasn't even the same author. It wasn't even the same author, man. Like, how desperate does someone have to be? So I just want to show something. And by the way, for the record, here are some more examples of me going after cats that believe Latinos and Mexicans are Israelites. So here's Quinalawa. He, Orthodox Moor had accused me of not going after Latinos who believe in Lashawan Kodash, which, by the way, I questioned Jose Vega when we had our conversation last year on that. And he says that they don't even really think that's ancient Hebrew. It's just like, I guess they're creatures of habit. They just use it because they're so used to using it. But they actually don't necessarily believe that's ancient Hebrew, that the pronunciation is Hebrew. And he doesn't really care about it. He says he doesn't get into the pronunciations or anything like that. So I did question him on that. I did question him on the viewpoint that his partner had regarding the God of the Old Testament being Satan. And I think Jose said that he didn't agree with his partner on that. That they clearly have disagreements, that they don't agree on every last minute bit and detail of doctrine. So... and I certainly don't agree with his partner on that because I was never affiliated with them. And two, I think it's absolutely positively false to conclude that the God of the Old Testament is somehow a different God than the God of the New Testament. It's just outlandish to even conclude that. All right. All right. I see you're in here. Let me, 93 just came back in.
Switch
so
it to the laptop. That's all.
Gotcha. So look what it's. So look what it says right here. Now this is Kunal Lawa. Anyone who knows Kunal Lawa on Facebook knows what his position is. He says, "Why do you put Lashawan Quadash in quotations?" I said, "I'm well aware that you're not in the camps, hence why I wanted to get a direct explanation from you as to why some from your side pronounce the Q as Qua when you, along with others, promote LQ, assert that there is no U sound in Hebrew, yet the very letter Q is pronounced Qua with the U sound in your pronunciation system." And then there's another one. I'm not going to go to too much more. I'm just, here we go. Here I am going more in depth on Lashawan Kodash and why I believe it's a faulty pronunciation system, which ironically enough was created by the camps. As for your question about wording when consonants transform into vowels and back again, our answer has been that each Hebrew letter has multiple vocalizations, and this is verified by the very transliterations you seemingly ignore, including those from the community you make appeals to the most, Qumran, because you have Greek scrolls in the Qumran community that preserve pronunciations. If you read those comments above, including the answer to your question, and still do not understand what the objections are, then I don't know what to tell you. So I've gone back and forth on Lashawan Kodash with these guys. And for the record, if anyone is wondering, why do I target Dante? To be honest, I don't even really check Dante's channel like that unless someone messages me to tell me about it. So, for example, you have people like this who will inbox me and send me videos like that. Did you see Dante's video from 4 days ago? Yup, trash, because someone else sent me the video and then I saw it from them. So that's how I end up essentially finding out about a lot of stuff. I'll have like 3 or 4 people send me the same video, and then I'll check it out, and I'll just to see what kind of foolishness is going to be said, and it ends up being really bad arguments, and then I end up, if it's really bad, I'll just ignore it, and if it's something like we did recently, we vet the sources, show how he doesn't know what he's quoting, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And we then bring out other sources to refute what he said, and we're going to continue doing that. And hopefully he'll understand how to actually start vetting sources properly. That's about all I can say about that. But with that being said, I'm probably going to wrap this up. Man, 93, I appreciate you for coming on through. Thank you for serving as a witness that day, because you were there at least for the last hour. You were only there for the last hour, so no one misconstrues and acts like 93 was there for the whole conversation. So I appreciate you for being there. 93, would you say that the conversation from what you heard was cordial between Moore and I? Was there ever a point in time where you felt that Moore was being contentious or I was being contentious, at least in the portions that you heard?
No, actually, I was a little upset. You were being far more trusting and nice than I thought you would be with someone who's usually associated with people who have such negative things to say about you. Not saying he has, at that point he hadn't, but he's been on a platform with people who has done certain things or said certain things. So I was a little skeptical. You were like very, willing to trust and be nice, whereas I was a little skeptical. But
right, and your skepticism unfortunately ended up being true. Now, to be fair, I even with what you said right there, I didn't want to employ the association fallacy with him. I didn't want to just assume because the people that are over here have these certain views that now he has to have those views. I wanted him to be his own man, like I do with anybody. I treat people on a case-by-case basis. And I wanted to be on record that I was attempting to extend an olive branch. And extending an olive branch doesn't mean I agree with his doctrinal positions. I certainly don't. I also want to mention one last thing, too. I know that the whole controversy about Mike Holloway, because the video that I'm referring to, where he accused me of being a member of or associated with the Ancient Watchmen or whatever the case is, had to do with the. So the title of the video was like Elder Mike Compromises or something like that. Now here's the fact. I told the brother Mike Holloway that I didn't believe he was compromising the faith because I understood the nuance in his argument. Let me help you guys understand what I mean by that. Mike doesn't really care about the whole identity thing. He and I have had conversations about this, and I don't necessarily knock him at all for that. I don't think he's compromising the faith at all. I did tell him that, you know, it's important not to ignore those arguments. But ultimately, if Mike doesn't feel motivated to talk about the whole ethnicity stuff, that's cool. No one's saying he has to. And I don't believe he's compromising the faith. So anybody who's trying to accuse me of something that I haven't said is wrong, because that hasn't been my position or my argument. I don't believe Mike Holloway, and Mike Holloway is a brother in the faith. He's a brother in Christ. That's my brother. I have a great deal of respect for Mike Holloway. In fact, I spoke to Mike Holloway and I told him straight up that I didn't believe he was compromising the faith, because again, I understood the nuance in his argument. I knew exactly what he was talking about. And my argument has also been nuanced. So before I let you guys go, I want to show you guys a video. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do two things. I'm going to show this video, and then I'm going to play some clips of Dante being disingenuous. All right. All right. Let me actually show video clip. So I did a interview on Raft and Grace Radio in 2017, where I told people that if somebody self-identifies as an Israelite, that in and of itself isn't enough for me to just outright just be like, oh, that's it, they're a heretic, they're out of here. I've never said that if a person self-identifies as an Israelite that I think that they're unsaved. That's never been my position. In fact, you could actually see my interview right here if you give me a second. This is from 2017, although I reshared it on my channel in 2018. This is my interview with Raft and Grace Radio. Raft and Grace Radio discussing the Hebrew Israelite movement. If you guys watch this whole video on the Faithful to God YouTube channel, if you ever get a chance, you will see on my channel, you will see that I at no point in time made a person self-identifying as an Israelite in and of itself as a salvation issue. Never. That's never been my position. What I have said, however, is if a person self-identifies as an Israelite and they're trying to force others to believe that you have to agree with them or else you don't have right standing with God, or in the case of someone like Tazarah, only Israel can be saved, either one of those positions I'm going to have problems with, because those people are making it a salvation issue. However, if a person tells me they believe they're an Israelite, but they tell me I'm not trying to force you to believe it, or if you disagree with me, that's cool. You know, it's just my viewpoint. Then it's just an agree to disagree. It's a Romans 14 issue for me, with me, as long as I know that the person holds to the essentials of the faith, which is the Trinity, salvation by grace through faith alone, grace alone, all that good stuff. And as long as I know that that person also is not just in orthodoxy, but also has orthopathy and orthopraxy. That means the way that they practice their faith, the way that they live their faith, the way that they treat others, their empathy. That's a hallmark of if a person is a true, genuine believer or not. At the end of the day, God alone knows who is who. I have no jurisdiction on who does or doesn't get into heaven. But based on how a person acts, their behavior, if a person behaves like a complete savage and they're disrespectful to people with no warrant whatsoever, as is the case with Dante Fortson, or for disagreements on non-essential issues, trying to turn the non-essentials into essentials, those people I have a hard time seeing as believers. I have a hard time seeing Dante Fortson as a believer. I do. And I think he is a deceiver based on the way that he behaves. It's not just mere head knowledge, it's also in his behavior. At the same time, I have to say, I also, unfortunately, like, for example, I don't hold this inclusivist view that you just have to believe in God and be a good person. Like, you have to believe in right doctrine, but also walk the right walk. So I honestly have to say that my viewpoints regarding Dante have nothing to do with his claiming that he is or isn't an Israelite. It has to do with all the other tomfoolery and the extra stuff, and more importantly, the lying. Dante Fortson is willing to lie on people, make up things on people. Unfortunately, it seems that Orthodox Moor is willing to do the same thing. These men are willing to lie on people. How is one supposed to have any sort of relationship, any sort of respectful relationship, even in an agree to disagree fashion, with people who are willing to lie. Fam, that to me bugs me out. And unless anybody from that side try to claim I've never checked people on my side when they behave poorly, I got the nickname the fruit inspector for a reason. People on my side labeled me the fruit inspector because I'm the guy that goes around trying to check everybody, making sure everybody's walking the walk and not just talking the talk. You can ask people from my side of the fence, what was my nickname? You know, when I started, matter of fact, you can ask the brother Brian, other people, what my nickname was. The fruit inspector.
Well, I'm glad that's the reason why you get that nickname.
All right. You funny. All right. Anyways, but yeah, I got the name the fruit inspector because, you know, the whole fruits of the spirit, by their fruits you shall know them. I got labeled the fruit inspector by certain people because I was always trying to check people on the way that they behave and everything else. You know, man, I've made public videos rebuking G-Man on my channel. I've had videos rebuking G-Con. Like, nobody can accuse me of not being consistent. I've had to check brothers and sisters behind the scene for certain behavior that they've done out in public. I don't play games. I don't do this whole, you know, trying to play games, trying to, you know, if somebody's wrong, they're wrong, even if it's on my side of the fence. And I've even had to check brothers and sisters who have been disrespectful towards Hebrew Israelites. Heck, I have a video on my channel where I had to apologize to IOG for something that I said about them that was incorrect. And I don't consider IOG to be within, given a lot of their doctrinal positions, I don't agree that they're in the bounds of orthodoxy. But I still apologize because I don't believe in misrepresenting people. So I would hope that the other side would learn to stop misrepresenting others and lying about them and making up things about them, and actually start trying to apply this supposed consistency and even-handedness that they talk about. Because I honestly, I don't see it when I notice that people from that side are willing to lie, including the people mentioned in this video. So let me do something real quick. I'm just going to play this one last video, and then after this, I'll probably wrap it up. So here's an example of Dante Fortson being disingenuous. And this is with one of the nicer people in the community, by the way. You know, let me actually go to relevant timestamp. Yeah, here we go. All right, I'm going to play the video right now. Let me make sure I got the right video. Yep. All right. Oh, no, this is the, what is this? Hold on a second. All right, here we go. All right, here's the video, and I'm going to play the video in a second. Let me actually do this real quick.
Dante Fortson had railed against Vocab Malone's Private Eye for Yahushai skit, which satirized other Israelites, employing precisely the disgusting slur alluded to in that emoji. Those other Israelites employ that disgusting slur when people question them. And Dante thought that skit was outrageous, but now we see that he sinks to the same depths, employing basically the same disgusting language in a not so veiled way. It's honestly quite sad. Greetings. I must confess, I was unsure if I wanted to make this video, as the topic is, in my opinion, somewhat infantile. But I nonetheless figured ultimately that I should make this short video as part of an attempt to clear something up, just a bit anyway. What inspired this video is this YouTube community post, which you see on your screen, from Dante Fortson. He had shared a video by Faithful to God, and his caption introducing that video read in part as follows, quote, "This is what a pathetic has-been does, looking for out-of-context Facebook posts instead of asking me to clarify," end quote. So Dante is stating that Faithful to God could have and should have reached out to him for clarification on what was covered in the relevant video. And the video in question happens to be the one I narrated on the topic of Dante Fortson, Michael Heiser, and the Book of Enoch. The video itself received a comment along similar lines, presumably from a supporter of Fortson, perhaps a person who may have found the video after seeing Fortson's post. And the comment reads as follows, quote, "Why don't you ask Dante yourself what he thinks and believes and teaches? That is what I would do. I'm just saying," end quote. So just in case others agree, or just in case anyone else wants to tell us that we should reach out to Dante Fortson and ask him for clarification, I wanted to offer a couple of points which are worthy of note. First, as it applies to specifically the video in question, the request that we ask Dante for clarification is awkward because the last 3.5 minutes of the video show multiple attempts by multiple people to get Dante to clarify his line of thought, to no avail. I'd say he was unwilling to clarify his position, but I'm tempted to say he was unable to clarify his position. Whatever the case, more importantly is the fact that beyond that particular topic, beyond that particular video, we've made multiple attempts to initiate cordial correspondences with Dante Fortson, and he has consistently avoided such dialogue. So in this video, I'd like to show a few examples of such, attempts to get Dante to clarify certain positions he holds, attempts to ask him questions, attempts to initiate dialogue with him, and see how he responds. To begin, there's this Facebook post from March 23rd of this year. In that post, he presented two propositions which he had boiled down as significant from the sources that he had been consulting. First, that there were slaves who claimed to be Israelites, and second, that Judaism was quote-unquote native to West Africa, whatever that means. I assume he means that there were people in West Africa practicing some form of Judaism. Whatever the case, in the same post, he declared that none of the urban apologists had debunked these propositions. So I went ahead and wrote a reply to his post, which I suppose you can read here if you slow down the video or pause it at the relevant points. But I'll also share a link to the thread in the video description, and people can look at it there at their leisure. In my reply, I asked some clarifying questions on what I felt were methodological points. And I also shared that one doesn't have to disagree with the propositions he presented. Rather, one can explore instead the line of thought that Fortson applies to those propositions, or the conclusions that he infers from those propositions. So Fortson replied to my comment, but he didn't really engage my points. Perhaps he didn't understand them, and he didn't answer my clarifying questions. Moreover, he stated the following to me, quote, "I don't care about your input about the Black community. None of your damn business. Go cause division in your own community and keep your nose out of ours," end quote. Then, on the 25th of March, so this is a thread that comes 2 days later, after the thread that we just looked at, he posted this new thread, which reads as follows, quote, "We really need to start shutting down and ignoring anyone that isn't Black when it comes to what we believe. Stay out of Black business and focus on your own damn community. We don't owe you any answers or explanations, and we damn sure don't need your permission or approval. These non-Black people in Black business are the reason we have so much division. Always a non-Black face trying to push division. Vocab Malone and his kind are the enemies of all Black people, not just Israel," end quote. In short, there were attempts to cordially engage Fortson's reasoning, and that included asking clarifying questions, precisely what Fortson and at least one of his followers thinks we should reach out to him with. But when those clarifying questions were actually presented to him, he quickly put up these arbitrary morphological restrictions on answering those clarifying questions or queries about his reasoning or whatever. Here's another post from the 25th of March, which opens with the following statement from Fortson. Quote, "Shout out to Bro Berean for exposing the white money behind Eric Mason. I said that from day one. It was racist white money behind this resistance," end quote. Then he proceeds to share a photo of Vocab Malone, David Wood, and other friends of theirs in the Christian apologetic scene. The juxtaposition of his caption and the photo seemed to imply that those men in the photo were paying Eric Mason. So I asked a clarifying question. I wrote to Dante the following, quote, "Is this post meant to imply that one or more of the men in that photo are paying Eric Mason to take the positions he takes? If so, what is the evidence for such a claim?" End quote. And what was Fortson's reply? He replied as follows, quote, "Stay out of black business," end quote. So there you see again an attempt to ask a clarifying question, and then, immediately comes this arbitrary morphological, requirement to set up a barrier to dialogue to provide an excuse for why he shouldn't have to clarify his position. Anyway, moving on, late last October, in another Facebook thread started by a different gentleman, I had left a comment trying to discuss the preliminaries of one's methodology for determining who is or is not an Israelite, and Dante Fortson left a comment in my subthread, but in reply to someone else. So since he was there in the subthread, under a comment by me, I decided to represent to him, the sort of basic methodological questions which I had presented to him in months prior. But, when I presented these questions to him previously, it was to no avail. So I asked him if he believed that paternal lineage was the sole determining factor in who is or is not an Israelite. And I asked him if he believes a person's morphology allows us to determine their lineage across millennia. These are important questions because when you start dialoguing with Israelites beyond the One West spectrum, you occasionally meet folks who don't put as much emphasis on paternal lineage. And you meet folks who put a lot of emphasis on morphology. It's funny enough, just recently, Dante Fortson shared a video by Teo Ministries in which they basically insinuated that a person could descend paternally from Jacob, but if he has the wrong morphology, if he's quote unquote white, then his descent from Jacob becomes irrelevant. He can't be an Israelite. That was the insinuation. I may get into that at a later time. But anyway, in this instance, Fortson refused to answer those clarifying questions regarding his approach, and instead he responded as follows, quote, "Oh, you still think I owe you an answer or explanation concerning anything? Go find a black person to speak to me on your behalf," end quote. Recently, Dante Fortson has been declaring that the urban apologist will be, quote, "over by the end of 2020, end quote. That's an interesting prediction, though it requires some clarification as to what precisely he means by that. Because if it turns out that, the people he considers urban apologists are still around in 2021 and 2022, then will his prediction have been wrong? Or will he say, that's not what I meant? So there needs to be some clarification. When a different gentleman made a similar prediction on Facebook, I asked him, likewise, how he defined urban apologists. And pardon the language here, but Dante chimed in with this eloquent and mature reply. He defined urban apologists, or UA, as, quote, "uneducated a-holes," end quote. And again, I ask that you pardon the language. Moreover, elsewhere in that thread, when Dante co-signed the other gentleman's post, I asked Dante to clarify what he meant by UA, by urban apologists. And once again, his reply was the same bit of profanity, and again, pardon the language, but there it is on your screen, "uneducated a-holes." This level of profanity and vulgarity is the kind of quality of reply that you might get back when you ask Dante Fortson a clarifying question. Now, before I close, let me share one more example, and this one is my personal favorite. Late last October, Dante Fortson shared on Facebook a video in which he discussed the pews at First African Baptist Church in Savannah, Georgia, with Pastor Kelly Richardson. And just to be clear, in the video, he makes clear that the primary focus was on those pews. Ironically, while the video is well over an hour long, not once do they attempt to look at any markings on the pews. But relevant to this discussion, I wound up being mentioned in the video. Here, take a look at this clip, which is just under a minute long.
Even to give clarity on the pews, because the reason why I'm offended by vocab alone, for example, his whole goal is to try to take everything that is identified with us and try to make it into a talking point to prove that, oh, these are not the people of the book. See, they're trying to use this as data Hebrew Israelite, all this other crazy stuff. So I just want to touch on a couple of things and knock down some of the lies that he put out there of taking me saying that I cannot read what's on the pews to saying that I can't read Hebrew and all this other stuff. And when I say I cannot read what's on the pews, I'm not the only one. Even his so-called person that brought him per se into the apologetics, Abu, made it clear that he can't read what's on the pews. And yet they're trying to say it's Arabic. So I want to just deal with that real quick.
Okay, so after watching the video, and especially with the part that mentioned me in mind, I went back to Fortson's, Dante Fortson's Facebook thread in which he linked to that video. And I left a comment noting that it's awkward to discuss the pews for over an hour, yet not once actually take a look at the markings on those pews. And then I responded to what Kelly Richardson had said about me and about Arabic being on the pews. So what was Dante Fortson's reply? He wrote the following, quote, "You are not black. Stay out of black business and go deal with your own kind and the BS you all are teaching," end quote. That is my favorite example of how absurd this is, because here we have Dante Fortson putting up a video in which specifically I'm mentioned, and yet he still declares that it's not my business because I failed to meet some arbitrary morphological requirement. It's honestly hilarious, and it's also sad. Now, as I close this video, I suspect that some will want to respond that Dante doesn't have to talk to us if he doesn't want to. And my reply to that would be to say, okay, fine, I agree. Dante Fortson is certainly free to avoid corresponding with us. He can choose to abstain from answering our clarifying questions. But if that's the road he's going to go down, then it is awkward to encourage us to reach out to him. Moreover, him putting a post complaining that someone allegedly didn't ask him to clarify something, it comes off as mere public theater when you view it against the backdrop of him spending months refusing to answer clarifying questions. He's going to complain about someone not asking him to clarify something when people have asked him to clarify things and he's refused to do so. He actually gets really frustrated when people do so. So in short, we have tried to initiate respectful correspondences with Dante Fortson. However, unfortunately, he has made clear that he prefers that we not correspond. For the most part, his only replies have been exhibitions of his own frustrations, evasions, and the profanity.
Somebody really sent him that in the inbox?
Am I in character or am I as vocab right now?
It can be vocab, that's fine.
Okay. What's up? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our debate. The topic today is Jesus God. Our two debaters are apologist Anthony Rogers. He'll be answering in the affirmative from the Christian perspective. I encourage you to check out his other debates on YouTube. And answering in the negative will be our Islamic apologist, Jamar Sadat, who will be taking his seat as soon as he is in character. That's myself, vocab, and then the Jamar Sadat character will give an alternative conclusion. With that, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together.
You had asked a question earlier if that was really in his inbox. Nah, man, look, if you go back, it was a mock conversation to it was basically a summary of what was said in the video, just in like a mock conversation form. Look, I'm gonna go back.
Oh, so he was playing like somebody saying that
No. Look, because it literally says it on the screen, bro. It says it. This is a mock conversation meant to parody Dante's poor behavior shown in this video. So then, when you look at the rest, you see how you see that you see where.
No, I got you. I had just only paid attention to that part when it passed. Yeah.
And so if you listen to what he's saying in the video, he's basically saying, "Shut up, Abu. You're not black. Go find someone black to text me your questions, camel jockey." The camel jockey is an inside joke because there's another Hebrew Israelite who called Abu a camel jockey. It's in the you could actually see it in the video. Black Hebrew Israelites debunk Acts. I think what is it? Acts 12:4. You know, when it talks about Easter. So there's a guy named Tawab Rakah who actually called Abu a camel jockey back in the day. And he says, so I just added that in there, even though Dante never called him a camel jockey. And then it says, you a uneducated, a-hole.
Was that Dante right there up there?
That's
himself after that?
No.
Oh.
Nah. So it was meant to parody what went on in the conversation, man, for the most part.
Yeah, but we also see if you guys actually do go find a black person to go against his information, he still don't respond.
I know, you're someone black. You're someone black. You responded his information and he hasn't responded back. But anyways, I presented all of those last two videos. I presented them because I'm going to ask Orthodox Moor the following question: is Dante Fortson's behavior warranted against someone like Abu? Or is it okay for Dante Fortson to falsely accuse Vocab Malone of being a Muslim? And if anybody knows that Vocab Malone isn't a Muslim, it's Orthodox Moor, because they've had two conversations. They had one in 2018 and one last year. And he knows for a fact he knows for a fact Vocab Malone is definitely not a Muslim, especially if he argues as hard against Islam as he does. It's ridiculous. And yet Dante never apologized for lying about Abu being lying about Vocab being a Muslim. He never apologized for that. Never retracted his statement, never did. He just ran with it. And that's what he does. And I'm sure he's going to run with me supposedly being a member of Mexican Israelite camp. He's going to still do his video tomorrow, still misrepresent me, still do his tomfoolery. But
well, they got a double header. They got the slander video, and then right after that, Tazarah is going to make an attempt to I guess form a he's going to make an argument. Or
they got the slander video, and then they got the red herring video. They probably I don't think they're going to address the points that we raised in the previous video that we did to Tazarah. But needless to say, it'll be interesting to see how that goes down. But hey, man, listen, I appreciate you for coming on through, man. Thank you so much, man, for coming on through. I'm gonna put you in the back for a little bit, man. Just stay right there. All right. Before I wrap this up, I just want to say this right now. I sincerely hope that the two men would avoid this sort of cheapery, these sort of cheap tactics, lying. This is wrong. Even from their own perspectives, this is wrong. This is flatly wrong. So I hope that they repent of that and they turn. And that, in the case of both, I sincerely hope they would both come to know Christ as Lord and Savior before their time on the earth is done. In the case of Dante, I'm not sure where his standing is. God alone knows. I know that Moore's position is weird, and I would hope that he would come to know Christ before his time is on the earth is done. And that's my heart's desire. But as it stands for where these conversations have gone, there's a reason why I'm keeping my distance from Moore, and there's definitely a reason why I've been making these videos to point out the inconsistency and the falsehood in Dante Fortson and the way that he's been behaving. It's not just about mere head knowledge, it's also about attitude. And the same way that I can correct people on my side of the fence, including people that these folks probably have pretended that no one has actually checked, when someone like me is constantly correcting people behind the scenes and even on my channel, I would hope that they would start correcting folks from their own side of the fence, and that they would try to practice what they preach and try to be consistent. So with that being said, I'm going to end this here. Yep. The fact that Dante's followers don't even call him out for his obvious deception only shows they're in a cult and will defend him regardless. I don't know if they're in a cult. I will say that there's a lot of two-facedness and double-mindedness going on from that side. The very things that they try to accuse our side of, they're doing. So, they're no better than the people that they think they're criticizing, when in reality, it's really them projecting their poor behavior onto us. But I sincerely hope and I pray for them to, come out of that deception. So with that being said, God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there. And until next time, take care. God bless.